At 11 o'clock on a Wednesday, I'll be with you live on Super Live Wednesdays, and we can discuss issues that you think are pertinent. You can also suggest issues to me that you want to discuss on the next round, and you can talk to me about the number of issues that you think affects you in any way possible. But today I wanted to go through some of the comments that we've been receiving. The schools are opening again, and so we're still in a time of COVID-19. What we're trying to do here is trying to engage you to get your opinion on these matters and these issues, so that we can understand public opinion, thoughts, and see how that fits into the content and the programs that we are producing at the moment. So please send me your comments. I'm going to go through some comments of this morning. We put up a post just to see how things are going in terms of what are people's thoughts about schools opening. What I picked up this morning was there was a barrage of comments that said that we're not prepared to send our kids to school. So I don't have children, but it's a different story altogether. But people are not prepared to send their children to school. Some people are saying they're not prepared to lose out time. Others are saying that this pandemic is going to continue. Others are saying the situation doesn't exist, it's conspiracy. All of these things are going on. Right now, I want to know from you, and you can tell me what your opinions are. What do you think should be done in the case of schools opening? Are you going to send your children to school or not? I'm going to read you some comments that came in this morning related to that matter, because I asked the question on social media this morning. Okay, a lot of people seem to have some mixed feelings. Abdul Qayyum Kamruddin says nope, he's never going to send his child to school. Amiz Williams says a big no, hell no. Elsa said no, she doesn't have any children and needs to go to school right now, but she says no. Yahya Clark says, as a teacher, I think the minister is more worried about NCS exams to be written. No curriculum adjustment for matrics. The papers are already set. That is a motivation, and they look like they have failed department come the end of the year. So that's his opinion. Farid Peterson says, if schools are opening, does that mean lockdown is over? I'm wondering the same thing. I've been wondering that for a good number of weeks actually. Said Ridwan says he's got mixed feelings about this, but I think life has to go on. I mean, if I don't send them to school now, that makes it right to send them in January 2021. The issue I have with this is that, or rather the question I have with this is that, didn't the entire world just stop? So if you say you're going to lose out a year, are you really losing out a year when even companies have not and are not able to put forth their strategic goals and plans for the year? So companies are not able to do it. Countries are not able to do it. And if those two are not able to do it, for example, then is your child really losing out a year, or has the world just slowed down in this time? So that's where my thinking is sitting right now. Riaz Bully says no, they want to abuse our children with satanic distancing and spitting into their hands around every turn. If you're online, please tell me what you really meant by that. Ridwan Walele says the answer is no, he's not sending his children to school. Children should go to the next grade. Matric should be tested in January, and university should make concessions for late registrations next year. Online schooling should continue, and the SABC should have daily schooling. Government school should fund teachers as far as possible. Philanthropists and large companies should come into play and create a market for home teachers and tutors to teach children at their home, subject to strict sanitization processes and all of that. The question I might have for him is that, do you honestly think putting kids to the next level is an answer? I personally object to it. I say that if we are all losing a year, we're losing a year, but do we not impede the quality of education if people just move on? Don't parents have an excuse when their children don't perform next year to say, but you just put them over to a grade or a standard that is not befitting, and my child was not ready for that grade. So you're opening up yourself to all of that. The only way, in my view, to balance the playing fields here is to simply say, right, okay, let's press the reset button when we need to press the reset button. But I don't think COVID's going away right now. Fatima Ismail says, I asked her if she's going to keep her children at home. She's saying, I don't know. Now, as I've just heard, if the kids are kept away from school, they lose their place. How true can that be? So if we send them to school, we are in danger, and we don't, they lose their place. It's like we are pushed into a corner. I would like to understand the constitutional validity of that. So if anyone legal's around, Faizal Dean or anybody else, you can let me know what the legal implications of that is. Can a child be pushed out of school because you don't want to send your child to school because of a potential global pandemic? That's a question I would like to ask. And the issue around something like that is very simple in my view, and that is, so if 200,000 children don't go to school, are all those children not going to be, are they going to be booted out of school? I don't think that's possible, because in numbers that doesn't sound possible to me at all. I'm just going to look at some of the other comments that has come in early on today. Please give me your comments about if you are sending your kids to school or not. I'm very interested to know, because right now I think we have some serious problems and issues, and I'm not certain. I feel loath at times to tell you what my personal opinion is, but I suppose I have to. Tadenda David, are you saying negative? So I take it you're not going to send your child to school at all. Jeremy Kutsia, no way am I ready to send my little ones to school. And sorry, Jenny, and they can redo the grade. To be honest with you, I kind of stand with you on that one. Sweetie Pillay, you saying no ways, my daughter's in grade 12. If you can further comment on that, saying, are you prepared to allow your child to go next year and just redo that? I'd like to just hear more about that. Shyam Lakay, it's difficult. As much as I want my twins currently in matric to redo the year, that is not an option, as I was told they are writing final exams. So I think you're in a very tricky situation, Shyam Lakay. If I keep them this year, there's no guarantee that they'll go back. So what do I do? Both my girls are high risk, type 1 diabetes. Okay, so let's just talk about diabetes very quickly. Professor Tim Noakes was on my show last week. You can go to an episode and look at the show last week. When it comes to diabetes is a key comorbidity factor when it comes to COVID-19, according to Professor Tim Noakes. This means if your child has diabetes and gets coronavirus, you're in a very, very tricky situation. So again, do you make the decision between sending your child to school, or with a risk factor like diabetes, keeping your child at home? Now, I've lost someone recently, as you know, and I can tell you outright, we need to make the decision sometime in our lives when nothing and anything is more important than having that person around you. And if such risk can be averted, then perhaps that's just where you need to be going. But it's up to you to decide. Nawal Saban, not ready to send my children to school. What if one of my children are asymptomatic? I have been exempted due to chronic illness. I have some thoughts around this also, and that is that, okay, this is a sketchy scenario. This is in my mind. You can correct me if I'm right or wrong. Remember, Super Live Wednesdays is your time to talk to me live, and I will engage you, take your opinions, and we can agree and disagree, but respectfully. No swearing, nothing like that. We just agree to disagree about issues. And if anyone posts anything that's personal, I will not engage that issue at all. I'll only engage the issue that we are discussing today on Super Live Wednesdays. Every Wednesday at 11 o'clock, by the way. So, let's just go to this issue. I just want to sketch a scenario for you. You guys can tell me if I'm right or wrong about this. Okay, so we have all these children in school, and children, generally their immunology is better than elderly people, so sometimes they're going to carry something and we might not even know. However, what are children in my view in this scenario? And this is my opinion. You don't need to agree, and I'm not enforcing my opinion on you. This is my opinion. These kids all converge. They're coming out of, so if there's 100 children in that school, let's just say safely they're coming from 100 different homes. So they go and they mix and they do whatever, and let's just say 5 of them is carrying all of that, the COVID-19 with them. They then spread that a little bit there, and that kids go back to their homes later that evening. So what happens in those homes? That's what I'm seeing in my head. Now you can contact me and let me know here if I'm thinking about this correctly or I'm not. But that's what I see. Then if we look at the case in France, they said there were 70 infections overnight because schools were open in France. So we've got that on IOL this morning, I think. So you can go and have a look at that article at the same time. Cyril Badith, if I pronounce your name correctly, my apology if I don't. I think the difficulty here when holding a child back is what happens next year when new grade 1 learners need to join already overcrowded classrooms. What a fantastic point, never thought about it. Alternatively, schools need to relook at how the Model C schools can accommodate learners. This is in itself a social danger. So Cyril's making a critical point. So what if we don't go to school? What about the kids that were supposed to go to grade 1 next year? I can only think of not sending them to grade 1 and they still need to stay at home. Because if everyone else has lost a year, then they need to lose a year too. Some people are going to say that I'm being unjustified in what I'm saying. But how else does one balance the scale? Ibrahim Mueddin, thank you for joining us. Mumtaz Bapu, thank you for joining us. Shiraz Umar, you are there. Fatima Toya Barnes is there. Shireen Kader, I picked up your comments this morning and I agreed with you this morning that the whole world has slowed down and we all need to slow down, I suppose. But please give me your comments. We are looking at whether kids should be going to school. People are talking about what if kids are asymptomatic? What do we do next year? Do we lose a year? Is the school going to become a cesspool of infections? And does that get taken to homes everywhere? There are kids with comorbid factors like diabetes, and diabetes is a big comorbidity issue, if I mentioned earlier on. Please watch my episode I did with Professor Tim Noakes early on in the week, the diet expert and the scientist, and he explained how diabetes is a key factor when it comes to an underlying condition that could influence an outcome when it comes to COVID-19. So please, diabetes is a key issue. Please give me your comments. I really want to know how you're seeing your child heading back to school. I'm going to go back to some of the comments on my private page this morning where people are a bit up in arms about going back to school. Some teachers were commenting. Khadija Essa, she says that she's very uncertain. She'll wait and see when grade 4s get back and will decide from there. I went to go and ask her the question that she needs to make a decision. I want to know whether she's sending her kid to school, yes or no, and she said no. Lola Taylor Tumber, if I got that right, if my kids were still schooling, I would have homeschooled them. I've lost a child in the past. I know the pain. Well, here we find another dynamic coming up. I know Khadija has lost a child too. Here's a parent that has lost a child, and there's a potential risk situation by sending children to school, and there are parents that could lose children. I want to go through to something else. I said something to some friends yesterday. I said to them, don't get me wrong, I'm not an anarchist in any way. I'm generally very positive about many things in life, but I'm also a realist at the same time. I've been watching what's going on for a good couple of weeks and months. And I've been out of the country just before the lockdown, and I looked into 3 countries that I traveled weeks before the lockdown, and I could see what was happening in those countries. And so here's another concern I have. I work also on a cemetery board in Cape Town. So I serve in many organizations, and one of them is a cemetery board in Cape Town. So I've been privileged to lots of discussions and information that is being discussed. And trust me, reality has started hitting home, and I really mean that. we are seeing an increase in burials in various communities due to COVID-19. And I know there's also a conspiracy around and a question mark around how many people are being marked COVID certified on their death, and those are not. That's another discussion we can have next week. But here's something that's in my mind. I have a feeling that when I listen to my hometown, where I live, in Cape Town, I've heard this one's got corona, this guy up at the wholesaler's got corona, then I've heard of somebody that passed away, then there was that 19-year-old guy that passed away. So suddenly there was like 4 in the last few days of people that we know, and then my dad's friend is in hospital at the moment in ICU. And I start asking myself the question, by the end of this year, are we going to find that somebody that we know, like a work colleague perhaps, or somebody that we schooled with, or that's at university with us, or somebody's friend, so a link to you, some type of nexus to you, has died of the virus? And if this continues, then at the end of 21 and end of 2022, are we all going to lose a family member or immediate family member in our home? I know you're probably thinking, where the hell did I come up with such a projection? It's not a projection. It's a feeling that I'm getting, that if we continue doing what we're doing and continue going the route that we're going. So while the economy needs to move on and while the world needs to move on, I also need to try and understand at what price. And then I have another question, and that is, has government perhaps done some mathematics around the world where they said, okay, we can't stop the entire world's economy, but every war has a price, and that price is that we are going to lose an X amount of people over an X amount of time, but the war will still continue. Is there such a factoring of life at the same time? Those are all questions that's in my mind right now. I want to go back to some other questions. Please pose your questions to me. I'm very interested to find out what you think about schools that are starting again, and I would want to just take your opinion on that. Please note, whatever comments you make on Super Live Wednesdays on social media is also used on the TV show. So I'm just giving you a disclaimer there, that your views and opinions will be aired throughout Africa on my show. This new manual says my kids are grade 5, 3 and daycare. I'm not prepared to send them. Kids will be swapping masks and hand sanitizers. Do you think that kids are less active or aware of their surroundings when it comes to hygiene? I personally do think they are. Kids will be kids, and I think we can have a problem there. Sharifa Smith, she says she's not sending her children at all. Mosques are closed, churches are closed. Why should schools be open? It's like sending your child to his or her death. Ryan has reminded me that there are 70 infections linked to the opening of schools in France. Major Ben Khan says the malls are filled with kids, some with and some without masks. These same parents say they won't be sending their kids to school. That's mind-boggling for her. Irfan Abrams, our lives as teachers and learners matter very little to these nitwit ministers. Okay, so he seems to be up in arms there with the minister and definitely doesn't appear to be agreeing with the minister's decision to send and open the schools again. Our school is in Mitchell's Plain in Cape Town, has not been professionally sanitized. Our 61-year-old janitor and some SMT members are expected to do it. I have 40 kids in a small classroom. How are we going to do social distancing? I can go on, but when the Cape Flats teachers vent, we are deemed as being lazy and slap. And for those out of the country, slap is like a South African term or an Afrikaans term for like being either willy-nilly or just of scant regard. But it's real. Our learners, their families and our lives matter. How can schools open in the Western Cape when our infection rate is almost double every day? Crazy, I say. Somebody took exception to what I said last week. They asked me which province is Cape Town in, and I said Wuhan province. Some people can't also take a joke, that's another story. And then Denzel Ford, the one thing as well, we are going into flu season. So obviously there's also something known as differential diagnosis. So in my opinion, as a non-medical doctor, I know that differential diagnosis, so we pick up a symptom, and the symptom is the same as is the identical symptom, but could be another disorder or disease, whatever. And obviously flu and COVID-19 seem to be having lots of symptoms that are alike, so that could be a problem in the diagnosis process. I'm just going to go back to the live video, see what you guys are saying there. Please do send me your comments. I'm really just getting your opinion for television this morning on schools reopening and what you think about schools reopening and what your concerns are when it comes to schools reopening right now. Where are my comments? I'm trying to just see where the comments are. Things are just different when you're not in studio, honestly. They're just absolutely different. so excuse me for that. I can see all the comments, but I don't know how to access them. Okay, here they are. Okay. Shireen Kade is also worried about those that are using public transport. So public transport is a problem when it comes to that. Soraya Sali, what would the school process be if kids are infected at schools? Do they close the school down for 2 weeks and disinfect the school, which means kids' schooling will be disrupted? How will teachers complete curriculum before exams? So I don't think it makes sense. Okay, so this is a very interesting comment, because what you're saying here is that, so let's just say that somebody is found to be positive with COVID-19. Does it mean that that school closes for 2 weeks and goes through the sanitizing process and the cost of the sanitizing process, because it's an entire school? And then if it's closed for 2 weeks and then 1 day later another child tests positive and that child was sitting in block C down the line, and there they have to go through the process again. So okay, so that could happen. That's another problem. Cyril Barrett, you are saying, I think we also need to keep in mind that there's a financial aspect to consider when a child repeats a grade, which many can't afford. Okay, I get what you're saying, but I would like to repose a question to you if you're still online, and that is that how do we weigh up the sanctity and the significance of life against finances? And I understand fully, don't get me wrong, Cyril, I understand fully that money makes the world go round. I get that, but I personally don't know how to toy with this all the time, because like we know people need to work, we get all of that, and people need to eat, we know that, and people their immunology is going to suffer when they don't eat properly, and if the immunology suffers, then we can see a higher incidence of COVID deaths, because people can't survive. So I got all of that. So it's a very tricky one. Shireen, Parliament should open 1 June to show school systems how to do this. We can learn and be equipped by the 1st of September or October. But if you're talking about September, October, you must remember something, that September, October is it's kind of end of the year. How do you really get booted up at that time of the year? Mumtaz Bapu saying, just a pertinent reminder of last night phasing in. Parents must register for homeschooling. Parents who is keeping their children at home, please ensure that you apply for an exemption. Find out what the situation and what the alternatives is that you have. A last comment was the comment about public transport. Thank you for joining me this morning. Wednesday mornings at 11 is called Super Live Wednesdays. It's time that I engage with you as an audience on a live platform. The other stuff is my TV show episodes, and then I've got the extra version. This edition of the show, I engage with you live. I'm quite happy to talk to you, provided we discuss the topics that's on the show. Note that your comments on Super Live Wednesdays ends up on my TV show, it ends up on my social media, ends up on this page, and ends up on my show's website at www.faizalsayed.com. Thank you for joining me this morning, and thank you for participating. Until next time, goodbye.